If you want to know how you can be mentored, if you want to know how to predict the future and how to know exactly what to do by modeling what other people are doing, you're going to find this episode incredibly interesting. So let's just get started. Dave, would you find it interesting to know how to predict the future?
Yes, I know that you've been doing it for a very long time, and it's kind of spooky. I only know three people who are capable of predicting the future. My dad always used to do it at Christmas and New Year. He would say whether it's a good year coming up or not. You can do it, and you work out exactly what the year's going to be like, which always fascinates me. And years ago, when I used to be working on the holiday resorts in the UK, we had a dancer who's part of our group called Debbie, and she used to introduce the lady who would predict the future, and she thought her name was Clairvoyant. So she'd go, "Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Clairvoyant." And the whole room would go, "Really? Are you sure about that?" But she never got on. She never caught it. That was maybe the title and not her name. So yeah, I'm really fascinated to find that out.
Yeah, it is very interesting to be able to foresee and to forecast what's going to happen. Actually, yesterday we were having a conversation and we were saying, well, how can we do a new positioning? And we were talking about the name industry forecaster. And I think this is a great name because it's exactly what it is. A mentor can help you forecast because, of course, they have the vision of what's going to be happening. And to be able to predict the future, the first thing that you need is to be able to put together the patterns in the past. In hypnosis, Dave, you require a lot of, you're required to identify a lot of patterns, and that's how you work with hypnosis, right?
Yep, yeah, absolutely. You work out, hypnosis is all about regression. It's all about taking them back to things that have happened in the past and changing their relationship to it. But what you can also do is once they're freed from all the stuff that's happened in the past, you can look at what they want in the future and clear the way so they're starting to move forward without any challenges. And so when you combine that with a vision board or a set of goals or a set of systems, you can fast track incredibly to get the stuff that you want because your brain is completely focused on moving forward and getting what you want out of life. So yeah, hypnosis and meditation are hand in hand with that, and prayer as well.
Yeah, so let's just talk a little bit about patterns because that's exactly what predicting the future is going to be about. And of course, it's linked to mentors because you can get to understand what's going to happen in the future if somebody can actually just show the different patterns which are happening in the past. Now, I'm going to talk about a book that I read in 1997. I mean, we're talking about, 25 years ago or whatever it is.
Very long time, Ernesto, very long time.
Very long time. This book, The Fourth Turning, written by William Strauss and Neil Howe, opened my eyes to the incredible power of putting together the dots into creating patterns and understanding what's going to be happening. Now, I have to say that I was actually really bummed that I did not see this pandemic coming. And you know what happened recently, Dave? I went back to seeing the book, and the pandemic is actually mentioned in page 403 that it was going to happen in the year 2020, and I missed it.
Oh my goodness! It's your fault, then.
It's my fault. Yeah.
You told me.
Exactly.
One of my cars.
The interesting thing is there wasn't a pattern. I mean, in reality, we had never been able to see a pattern because the last time that this really happened, as it is happening right now, it was in 1918. So of course, I read the information, but I didn't really know exactly how it was going to be applying. And if I read it, I mean, I said, well, yeah, this is too far-fetched. So this is what happens, why it's so critical that you understand how the patterns are working. So I recommend you guys to read The Fourth Turning because it's very It's incredibly accurate. So order it in Amazon, start reading it, because it's going to make a big, big change. Now, if you don't have the time to read the book, which I definitely recommend, this is one of those books that you need to have in your desk because it's so incredibly accurate. Now, let me just explain to you how exactly it works. Once again, everything is through patterns. So this is an example of how the fourth turning works. So as you can just see over here, the patterns go into 1773, which they had the Revolutionary War. The Constitution was approved, and this, by the way, is based on the history of the United States. The history of every country might have some different feels to it, but it's very similar in every single country around the world. Then we have another cycle, which is 1850. Then we have another cycle that starts in 1929, which is exactly when the fall down from the stock exchange, and then the last one started in 2008. So what these guys are saying in the fourth turning is that every cycle, which is basically, if you think about it, a century in French, the word century in French, it's a cycle, which is a cycle, lasts about 83 to 84 years. So every 83 to 84 years, every single cycle goes through, and that cycle is divided in the same way as the seasons in the through the years. So you have first spring, summer, autumn, winter, and in history they have a different name, which I will show you here for a moment. They are called High Awakening, Unraveling Crisis, and that's how it all goes. So there's 4 seasons or 4 turnings, and that's why the reason of the book. That's why the book is called The Fourth Turning.
I was going to say, on that previous diagram, it said 2028, Christ's return. That's quite a big thing to ignore, by the way. I just thought I'd mention that. You know, well, so in 8 years' time, when Christ comes back, and you go, "Oh, I knew there's something I should have told you about."
No. Right. Actually, what happens is that we are entering into the beginning of the crisis. Actually, the crisis is going to last till 2028. We will explain to you exactly how this is going to last. I mean, this is an 8-year period, which is basically until 2005, and they have been predicting this already since 1991. I used to talk about it. I have a number of different videos on YouTube about this, and as you can see, the cycle started in 2008. So it's the crisis part lasts until 2028. So we are right now in the very last section of it, and that's why it's so critical that we understand how this all works. So just basically by looking at this, we can see that there's 4 different archetypes, 4 different people that lived on every single stage: the artists, the prophets, the nomads, the heroes. And if we translate it into generations, we are going to have the millennials, we're going to have the baby boomers, we're going to have the silent generation, we're going to have Generation X, and each and every single one of them has and plays a role throughout life. So might sound a little bit complicated, but the reason why I wanted to explain this to you was because right now you definitely need somebody to guide you through this very tough time that we are going to be getting into. So I'm going to show you a video because I don't want to go too much into this, because we could just be talking about this the whole episode.
You've scared me now.
Well, it is scary. It is actually scary. And wait until you see this video. I mean, this video is this video is compelling. It's a compilation of an explanation done by our friend Roger Hamilton that we met a long time ago there in Dubai.
Yeah.
And he's going to explain what's going to happen now, and you're going to see how accurate it is, and then we will tell you how you need to prepare for all this chaos. Have a look.
In their book, The Fourth Turning, this is exactly what they say about each of the 5 different stages, starting with stage 1, the spark. A spark will ignite a new mood. The CDC announces the spread of a new communicable virus. Congress enacts mandatory quarantine measures. Mayors resist. Urban gangs battle suburban militias. Calls mount for the president to declare martial law. So this is actually from the book where they're going through the different scenarios of what's likely to happen, which actually triggers the crisis, which means what you've seen so far is just the beginning. It's not the crisis itself. After the first phase, which is what we're in right now, comes the second stage, which is disruption. This is what they say about what's about to come. The new mood and its jarring new problems will provide a natural endpoint for the unraveling era decline in civic confidence. As the crisis catalyzes, these fears will rush to the surface, jagged and exposed. Distrustful of some things, the individuals will feel that their survival requires them to distrust more things. This behavior could cascade into a sudden downward spiral and implosion of societal trust. So everything we're going through right now is not about coronavirus. Everything we're going through right now is not about the riots in the streets. Everything we're going through is about a breakdown of the trust of the old system in order for a new system to be created, which has happened every single time that there's been a fourth turning. So what about the third stage, which we can expect to see maybe 6 months or even 12 months away from now? The third stage is collapse. At some point, America's short-term crisis psychology will catch up with the long-term post-unraveling fundamentals. This might result in a great devaluation, a severe drop in the market price of most financial and real assets. As assets devalue, trust will further disintegrate, which will cause assets to devalue further, and so on. Many Americans won't know where their savings are, who their employer is, what their pension is, or how their government works. Before long, America's old civic order will seem ruined beyond repair. People will feel like a magnet has passed over society's disk drive, blanking out the social contract, wiping out old deals, clearing the books of vast, unpayable promises to which people have once felt entitled. And so what about stage 4? Stage 4 is the climax. It's the peak of the whole thing, just like when you have a wave, it rises, and then it crashes. From this trough and from these dangers, the makings of a new social contract and new civic order will arise. This battle could be peaceful or violent, involving public and private militias. Decisive events will occur, events so vast, powerful, and unique that they lie beyond today's wildest hypotheses. Armed confrontation usually occurs around the climax of the crisis. If there is confrontation, it's likely to lead to war. This could be any kind of war: class war, war against terrorists, or superpower war. And that takes us to stage 5, because stage 5 is new beginnings. And this is what we can be expecting in the coming years as this crisis plays out. The economy will in time recover. Compared to today, it will be less globally dependent, with smaller cross-border trade and capital flows. And emerging in this crisis climax will be a great entropy reversal, that miracle of human history in which trust is reborn. In a moment of maximum danger, that seed will implant and a new social contract will take root. For a brief time, this American feminine will be malleable in ways that would stagger today's unraveling era mindset. The crisis climax will recede into the public memory, a heart-pounding memory to all who will recall it personally, a pivot point for those born in its aftermath, the stuff of myth and legend for later generations. What are 3 things you can do with all this information? Number 1, don't get caught up in the hysteria of the media. The more you have a sense of what's coming, the less you're going to be surprised or shocked when it actually happens. Number 2, expect things to get worse before they get better. So now is not the time to go like crazy, like celebrating about the fact that we suddenly have an end to the lockdown. This is a time to be cautious and to be ready for battening down the hatches for the winter that's coming. And the third thing is get ready for a new beginning. While it's not going to happen overnight, it is going to come in the next couple of years. And this is a moment in time which only happens once in a lifetime. As Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. The more in tune you are with the whole seasons of not just nature, but humanity itself, the more we actually can go out there and shape that humanity.
Hug me, Ernesto. Hug me. I feel really bad. Nanu. From Dubai to Abu Dhabi to Houston. It's really strange hearing that. The only thing he didn't say is there's going to be a zombie holocaust on the back of that, so make sure you keep a pickaxe in your house. Everything else is, oh my goodness.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that this is not the first time it happened. I mean, it is an end of an era, and it is also the beginning of another era, and this is exactly where two are colliding. So I revisited this book recently because, I mean, right now we are incredibly confused with what's going on. I mean, people are completely confused, but if you saw, it's exactly what is happening. And for me, after I revisited the book again, it was incredibly surprising to see that the pandemic was actually mentioned in page 403, and it's incredibly accurate, So I believe that this is exactly where we're going, and the new beginnings are going to start in the year 2023, 2024, and it's going to be a transition. But these next 2 or 3 years are going to be very, very difficult, and I think we need to be prepared and we need to find new ways. Now, when all these crises happen, it is also a growth of incredible opportunities, but we need to have that right mentality. And there's nothing better than having a mentor which can actually guide you through that process.
Absolutely. By the way, guys, if you found this useful and you're enjoying it, make sure that you leave your comments, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you smash the notification bell to make sure that every single time we broadcast and share this kind of content, you get to find out about it first. We're live on Facebook. We're sharing it across lots of different formats later on. And we love the fact that you're with us, which we're glad for. But you also need to make sure you share it with your friends. If you can do a live watch party, and that means your friends will get it automatically, and make sure you subscribe to join our Fast Forward show, which is it's exclusive on a Thursday. You can't get in unless you've actually joined us. And you can see underneath the URL, facebook.com/groups/Fast Forward show. And that's the only way you get to find out how you can deep dive on this content. And Ernesto is sharing some incredible gems about how to change the world and how you need to be a part of it. So with that, Ernesto, back to you. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, this is starting to get scary, isn't it? So anyway, Dave, what are your superpowers? Because I think that's a topic that we've been brewing, trying to talk about it. So I think if you think that if we talk about superpowers in future editions of the Toilet Paper Diaries, let us know what you think. But anyway, let's just go. What are your superpowers, Dave?
Okay, my superpower is that I'm very good at engaging and reading people. So I can profile people within a very short amount of time to work out their own personal Wi-Fi code, work out their drivers, work out whether they're happy, sad, and so on, even if they're hiding it. And I can do it not only to a person in front of me, but I can do it over thousands of people in an audience, which is why it makes me a very powerful entertainer and a very good coach and a very good mentor, because I'm able to work out that affinity with people. And that comes from growing up as a black kid in white society, where literally you had to work out with everybody you met from the second you met them, are they friend or foe, or is it going to be a challenge? And so you got to read people and also project your personality onto people in a way that would help you bond. And it's like Malcolm Gladwell says about, 10 years of purposeful practice. Well, I've had years of practicing this. I'm pretty good at reading out whether people, I mean, we talk about this. We always talk about somebody that we've met and we will compare notes. And most of the time I've got it right about the person. Every now and again I get it wrong, but most of the time I got it right. So that's what I would say is my superpower. How about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you were mentioning earlier, one of my superpowers is actually doing predictions. And I've been really very accurate. I mean, I remember about 3 months prior than the election that I predicted that Obama was going to win. Right now, I'm just starting to connect the points, and very soon I'm going to have my prediction of who's going to win the elections in 2020. Not yet, because I haven't connected all those dots. Remember, one of the things that we need to understand is we have to understand patterns. And this is an important thing that we need to know. And the other thing that I am very good at is re-engineering or reverse engineering, not re-engineering, but reverse engineering how things work. Those are my superpowers.
No, I'd say that's perfectly right. And I've seen you use it, which is really strange, because when we've worked together on speaker projects and speaker training projects, we don't actually interrupt and have a challenge with each other at all. There's no jealousy in any of it, because we both bring such different skill sets to the table, even in the speaking world. The way that we work with people and the way that we train people is completely different, which is why we've been friends for 20 years. And even now, if you were on the other side of the table from me right now, I wouldn't be kicking you under the table, because we get on, which is good.
So welcome to episode 63, where we're going to be talking about mentors. Mentors matter, so choose them wisely. But the question is, what is a mentor? It's very confusing. I mean, sometimes people say, well, my mentor is President Obama, and they had never even met President Obama. Some people say, my mentor is Jesus Christ. And of course, I mean, I don't think that they have actually met. I mean, there's so many difficult things for people to say who their mentor is. What in your eyes is a mentor, Dave?
Well, there's two types of mentor. There's the first of all, the one that helps you to move forward by guiding you from their own experience and fast tracking your way to get what you want. And the second type is that little sweet, and you can get them in minty form or fruity form, and they're really tasty, and you can't help but finish a whole packet when you're sitting in the car in traffic.
Those are mentors, not mentors.
Okay, just the first one then. It's somebody who helps you.
The Mentos are the ones that you put with Coke and they explode, right?
I've never had Coke, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen videos.
Coca-Cola.
But yes. The difference between a mentor and a coach is quite specific as well. But a mentor really does share with you from experience what you need to know, so you don't have to go through the same challenges that they do. And they save you years and years because of that.
So if you really want to know what you need to do and what you need to know about mentors, keep on watching. You're going to really enjoy this episode. So Dave, let's just go a little bit over our lifetimes and talk about what our experience has been with mentors. Let me just start when I was about 5 years old, and it continued until I was 16 or 17, when my dad used to take me every morning to school. I was driving from home to school, and every single morning at 7:50 in the morning, there was Earl Nightingale in Radio VIP in Mexico City, which was the only English-speaking station in Mexico, sharing one of his pearls of wisdom. And every single day throughout my entire childhood, I kept on listening to Earl Nightingale. I do not know if people are old enough to actually remember Earl Nightingale, but I mean, it's like talking about Napoleon Hill, talking about John Paul Getty. I mean, all these people which are really very old into the self-development. Let me just share with you. You know, I was just looking around and in YouTube, and I found one of his pearls of wisdom that he actually was sharing on those days. Have a look.
We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about. Throughout all history, the great wise men and teachers, philosophers and prophets have disagreed with one another on many different things. It's only on this one point that they are in complete and unanimous agreement. If you only care enough for a result, you will almost certainly attain it. If you wish to be rich, you will be rich. If you wish to be learned, you will be learned. If you wish to be good, you will be good. Only you must then really wish these things, and wish them exclusively, and not wish at the same time 100 other incompatible things just as strongly. The great law, briefly and simply stated, is that if you think in negative terms, you will get negative results. If you think in positive terms, you will achieve positive results. In 3 words, believe and succeed. William Shakespeare put it this way: our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt. George Bernard Shaw said, people are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, make them. Well, it's pretty apparent, isn't it? And every person who discovered this for a while believed that he was the first one to work it out. We become what we think about. Now, it stands to reason that a person who's thinking about a concrete and worthwhile goal is going to reach it, because that's what he's thinking about, and we become what we think about. Conversely, the man who has no goal, who doesn't know where he's going, and whose thoughts must therefore be thoughts of confusion and anxiety and fear and worry, becomes what he thinks about. His life becomes one of frustration and fear and anxiety and worry. And if he thinks about nothing, he becomes nothing. You see, the human mind is the last great unexplored continent on Earth. It contains riches beyond our wildest dreams. It will return anything we want to plant. Now, you might say, well, if that's true, why don't people use their minds more? Well, I think they figured out an answer to that one, too. Our mind comes as standard equipment at birth. It's free, and things that are given to us for nothing we place little value on. Things that we pay money for, we value. The paradox is that exactly the reverse is true. Everything that's really worthwhile in life came to us free. Our minds, our souls, our bodies, our hopes, our dreams, our ambitions, our intelligence, our love of family and children and friends and country, all these priceless possessions are free. But the things that cost us money are actually very cheap and can be replaced at any time. A good man can be completely wiped out and make another fortune. He can do that several times. Even if our home burns down, we can rebuild it. But the things we got for nothing, we can never replace. The human mind isn't used because we take it for granted. Familiarity breeds contempt. It can do any kind of job we assign to it, but generally speaking, we use it for little jobs instead of big important ones. So decide now. Plant your goal in your mind. It's the most important decision you ever make in your entire life. What is it you want?
Every single morning, just listening to this was really giving me very strong memories. I mean, since my dad died, I haven't heard this. I mean, Earl Nightingale, and of course, I mean, I was completely transported to that time. We were driving, and we were both listening to this. It was 5 minutes or 3 minutes every single morning, and how this affected me for the rest of my life, because every single morning, and I was 5 years old. Now, the question is, was Earl Nightingale my mentor? I don't think so, because I never met Earl Nightingale. I would have a better feeling and a better understanding of my dad because my dad brought me to him. So that's just my thought. I mean, what are your thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, the thing is, if you've had something that's influential on you, it could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be a voice, it could be a bad experience. These are all patterns that when you're interested in them, they repeat on you. So if you're a negative person, you see negativity everywhere, just as Earl Nightingale was saying there. If you're a happy person, you'll see happiness everywhere. But a lot of this is given to you as vocals of sound or given to you as images. So if something's really powerful, like Earl Nightingale stuff, it will repeat if you pay attention to it. The same as the amount of people, and as a therapist, I've had to deal with it, the amount of people who have had to help them get over their parents or a tough childhood and all the things that when you talk about Nightingale and how he empowered you when he went to school, they had parents that were nagging or picking on them or treating them really badly. And so that's what they have to get over. So it's all down to coding and programming. And it really is important. And this is the thing about the news, even at our age, not to program your head subconsciously with stuff that doesn't help you move forward. So the importance for mentors is having somebody who can help you and guide you with the right stuff to aim for, who can give you a roadmap so you don't have to deal with everybody else's rubbish, because most people don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and right now with the situation which we're in, all what we see, I mean, we just go on social media, we go in the news, and everything is negative. So if we focus on that, exactly as Earl Nightingale was mentioning there, we are going to be getting negative results. Now, what is the problem with that? That those negative results are going to be really impacting your life, because we, according to the historical cycles, we are getting into a very tough times for the next year and year and a half. So that's why it's really critical that we get to hear the right messages. So, Dave, in your experience when you were little, how did you actually started getting into self-development and self-help and all those kind of things? Because for me, it was Earl Nightingale, the one that opened those doors. And then I'll tell you a little bit more, but I would like to hear from you first.
From a very early age, I didn't have a roadmap at all. I spent the first maybe 20 years of my life following patterns that people had given me because I believed they were older and wiser, and because they're influential, then they must know what they're talking about. And it took a real time for me to turn around and say, actually, everybody's making it up. Nobody actually knows what's right for me at all. They're just applying what's right for them or kind of works for them and saying, Dave, you should follow this. And it took a long time to realize that, including going to study law. I mean, I studied 2 years of law at university, and I ended up dropping out of it. I went back and got a postgraduate diploma in radio journalism, but it took a long time to realize that the stuff around me wasn't quite right for me. But up until the age of 7, you take in everything, and then a lid gets put on it, and it's stuck there, and then you have to find a new way of moving forward. If I was to put my finger on the most influential thing that mentored me and formed me, and you'll get this when I say it, it was reading superhero comics. I was obsessed with them because it was all empowering. These guys were lost, especially the Marvel ones. They were lost, but had something deep inside that allowed them to be better and special. And so that's what helped to mentor me.
Yeah, so we're talking about a mentor could be seen in many dimensions. I mean, you were using superheroes, and that's why we're going to also be talking about superpowers. For me, it was my dad exposing me to this kind of thing. In your eyes, if you're watching right now, what got you into the path of enlightenment? We are very curious about it. Now, when I finished, when I grew up and when I finished school, I was intrigued about many things, and because of Earl Nightingale, because the Nightingale Conant Company, I got to meet Jim Rohn, and this was my first experience in thinking that I was having a mentor. And with him, I met him 3 or 4 times. I saw him in Dallas, I saw him in Anaheim, I saw him in Atlanta. I saw him in several places when I was in my late teens, early 20s. And I read all his books. I did all his courses. And it was the first time that I ever felt that I had a teacher. But we only met 4 times, without count also as a mentor. I mean, we met, but we didn't really have that bonding relationship. What do you think, Dave?
I do think it does, because here's the thing. It matters as to what you interpret it to be. Yeah. So it depends on what you then take the information, put it in here. And if you're all the time asking yourself what Jim Rohn would be saying to you, then he's mentoring you. Even now, he could be mentoring you.
Absolutely. Well, remember what we were saying about the 4 different turnings that are in history, and that every turning is like, if it will be spring, summer, autumn, winter. The first time that I internalized the concept that the winter is not going to last forever, and every winter has a spring afterwards, and you need to understand how to live winters, was Jim Rohn. Just have a look at this, because it's going to have a strong impact, so that you learn to understand what's going to be happening in the next few months and years. Have a look.
Now here's the 4 major lessons in life to learn. Number 1, learn how to handle the winters. It's a fact of life. The winters follow the fall, the harvest. And pray tell how often? 6,000 years that we know of, recorded history. Winter comes after fall. Night comes after day. Difficulty follows opportunity. Recession always comes after expansion. It's been the rhythm of life for the last 6,000 years of recorded history. Now there's all kinds of winters. There's the winter of the season, but there's all kinds of other winters. There's political winters. What a winter that was when the Nazis marched into Prague. What a winter it was when the communists put up the Iron Curtain. What a winter it was when Stalin finally took power in Russia. What a winter it was when Benito Mussolini took power in Italy. What a winter it was in Japan. What a winter it was in many parts of the world back during World War II, one of the longest winters, political winters in recorded history. So the winters are going to come. The winter of sickness, the winter of disappointment, the winter of devastation, social winters, economic winters, personal winters when your heart is smashed in 1,000 pieces and the nights are unusually long. It's simply called wintertime. But the winters are inevitable. So it has been for the last 6,500 years recorded history. You say, well, Mr. Rohn, what can I do about the winters of life? In World War II, we marched against the winter, and finally the spring came. We marched against the tyranny of communism, and finally the walls came tumbling down. We marched against the tyranny of the Nazis, and finally liberated the world for democracy and freedom. And that's what I'm telling you. It's possible for you to conquer your winters.
Very powerful. And everyone's got their own personal winter to deal with, apart from the one that we've got that we're all going through at this moment in time. Just going to say, by the way, guys, we'd love to have your comments, your thoughts on all this stuff. Put it into the chat part. Put it into the comments. And we'd love to be able to interact with you. Let us know what you think about all the stuff and the content we're sharing with you. And make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like it. Start a watch party. And we'd like to be able to share this content with as many people as possible. Ernesto, you're a big fan of Jim Rohn. I love Jim Rohn stuff. I love the way he does, but then he has this brilliant way of saying things, and it's just entrancing. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, it's incredibly powerful. And once again, this short segment, I had to really look for it because it's exactly where we're going through. We are going to, this is the beginning of the winter. And it got us completely by surprise, which we were not expecting that it was going to be like this. We thought that the winter had already passed, even though that I could predict some things. But right now, I mean, in retrospective, I could have been able to see it. And that's why I think it's very important that we talk to everybody and let them know that, yes, we are getting into a winter, and how critical it is to learn that you can master your winters. And this is the importance of having a mentor. And sometimes, you know, this is one of those things which is incredible. Sometimes whatever someone tells you, it doesn't make sense until it does.
Until you're in the middle of it. Well, my parents always used to tell me all these things, and I would go, yeah, whatever. And then I find I'm saying the same things to my daughter because I know exactly what they meant. But sometimes you can't be told. Sometimes you have to go through it yourself before you actually experience it. But that is about time. I don't really want to waste time going through new experiences. I want to get it right first time.
One thing leads to the other, and that's one of those things which is very important. So we went from Earl Nightingale, because of Earl Nightingale, Nightingale Conant, and then I got to meet Jim Rohn. And then after Jim Rohn, I went to one of the presentations, and I got to meet personally Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen that wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. And this was one of the strongest lessons that I got from him. Now, what happens is I got so enthralled and so into his way of thinking that I took his 3-week course. I was there in Santa Barbara, California, and I learned so much about training, about public speaking, about self-esteem, about delivering a message. So much information. Now, I spent with him 3 weeks. I interacted with him several times through, in those days was America Online, that we were basically exchanging messages. We had like a bulletin board and we were exchanging messages. Would that count, Dave, as he was my mentor?
Yeah, I think so, especially if it's a financial relationship. If you're paying money for that relationship, because then he's duty bound to make sure he gives you the right information, because there's a contract in there. And I'm a huge fan of Jack Canfield. Read everything, met him, interviewed him, done all those things, studied with him. And yeah, Jack Canfield is worth his weight in gold, because the stuff that he shared at that time in my life was so important. I would not be doing what I'm doing now, guaranteed, if not going through that. So yes, you're right.
Yeah, Jack Canfield was the first person ever that I actually paid. In fact, it was not me paying. I mean, I was fortunate enough to get KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, which was my employer at the moment, to get me to train with him. And it completely changed my life. But there's one specific formula that Jack shared that really resonated with me. And I'm sure that as soon as you see it, it's also going to resonate with you. Have a look.
I'm writing this whole thing about a formula called E plus R equals O, that there are events that occur in your life, and then you have a response to that event, and then you get an outcome. And what most people do when they don't get the outcome they want is they blame the event. They blame the government, the weather, their parents were alcoholics, their boss is a jerk, whatever it is. And what we're seeing is that people need to realize that the only thing that's going to produce a better outcome, more of what you want in life, is by changing your response, because the event's not going to change. And so we have to change our thinking, we have to change the pictures we hold in our head, we have to change our beliefs, and we have to change our behaviors. And when we do that, then we can start producing different outcomes.
That's so true.
So E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. We are seeing right now a big difference of how people are responding to this pandemic. I mean, people which are going crazy. We have all the Karens and the Kevins and whatever it is going and creating tremendous chaos. We're seeing people which are very afraid. We're people which are taking it with a better way of thinking. So the event is exactly the same thing, but you cannot change the event. We won't be able to change the event. What's the only thing that we can change to change the outcome? And that's going to be the response. And that for me has lived with me my entire life. And that came also from one of my mentors, which, yes, I consider him a mentor, because that's where most people get very confused. Who is really your mentor? Who actually is your mentor?
Absolutely. No, I agree with you completely. And I think that we'll be pursuing the different types of mentors that you have. But if anybody's watching this and thinking, I've never had a mentor, I've never had anybody share with me ideas that help me to move forward faster, then you really do need to start considering having it, because otherwise you're walking around in the dark, basically trying to find where you're going with no roadmap and no illumination in front of you. And the fact you've survived it so far means it doesn't mean necessarily it's going to be an easy ride after this point on. Use the opportunity to start thinking about who, if I was able to help me, who would know best about how to get me to where I need to go, and how do I connect with them? Yeah. Always think it all the time, asking better questions.
Yeah, we're having here a message from our friend Carola in the Netherlands saying, Tony Robbins talks about winter all the time in his seminars, especially in business mastery. Yeah, right now I think it's important. That's a mentor that Carola and I have together. We met during our times with Tony Robbins, and it was just an interesting thing. This, after my training with Jack Canfield, I was already working for the training department for KLM. And then I got into trying to understand how the psychology of training worked. And then I got involved with the Tony Robbins organization. I went to their Unlimited Power Within seminar, and then I became a volunteer. And then I went into the leadership, and I was with the Robbins organization for 12 years. Now, I met Tony many times. I have shaken his hand. I have hugged him. I have really, spent time with him, with a ton of other people around. And I have been to at least 100 of his seminars, at least in Wales, in the Netherlands, in Italy, in Singapore, in the States. But we had never had a one-on-one relationship. I have heard
he's never said, I love you.
He never said, I love you.
He's never said, I love you. Ernesto.
So the question, once again, is, has he been my mentor?
Oh, 100% he's been your mentor. I mean, whenever we talk about the famous speakers, we talk about them from the point of view of the great learnings we've had from them, but also from a technical point of view of being speakers. You speak about Tony Robbins. I would say 50% of the speaking examples you give are about your experience with Tony. So I know how effective and how powerful it is as an influence for you and as a mentor. So 100%, yeah.
One of the things that I learned from him is proximity is power. If you can get proximity with people that are the best in the world, things can happen because of all the people they know, the insights they have, and the life experience they have. They can save you a decade in time with one insight. And even though I was not really close to him, I was in the proximity. So in my eyes, definitely Tony has been one of my mentors. So I ask you, who have you been close to that can definitely open some doors? Let's say in your case, Dave, who have you been close to that has opened doors in your life?
I've got to put down my father, first of all, who's been a commanding figure all the way through my life, because what he used to do is ask me a ton of questions, and now I have his voice ask me questions all the way through. But my own direction was slightly different. You had the wonderful opportunity, and I'm so jealous of spending quality time with Jim Rohn and all these other speakers. And I'm just going, wow, that's amazing. I have met many of them. I have interviewed many of them and spent quality time, but I've studied a ton of their stuff. I had a slightly different route into it. Now, if we're able to look at some of the images that we've got from me from the very early stages, I was on stage taking part in a lot of school plays. And so it was very difficult to be able to find mentors that would guide me. At that stage on school, I had a teacher who was teaching me how to do singing lessons, but it's pretty much having to find my own way. In that case, I actually was probably closer to Elvis than anybody, because I loved Elvis's attitude and the way he was on stage, but there wasn't access to many, certainly in video, that could take me in that direction. And as I moved on, I started working for the BBC. I got really close to various journalists who spent some quality time on stage with me. There we go with a guy called Tony Fisher. So Tony Fisher and I would go on, and he'd been around a little bit longer than I had. So he shared some ideas with me. I was an entertainer by trade anyway, but he'd been around in radio more. So I learned a lot from him, but then he moved on. So you got to find it. And what I found was I came to a point where I actually had more experience than many of the people in my normal world who could mentor me in a normal job. I wasn't bumping into the Tony Robbins in those days of all the big hitters. So I found myself, if anything, mentoring other people. So for instance, when I came to Dubai, which is after working for the BBC for a number of years, I was going on stage with some really big artists. And the way of working the entertainment and working it all could go back to my background of doing it all. So with the next picture, there's me on stage bringing on Kanye West with about 15,000 people at the Desert Rhythm Festival. And that knowledge of it was partly from watching other people do that kind of event, but then taking it and starting to build on it myself. So then I decided not to work in entertainment anymore. I wanted to stay in entertainment, but I didn't want to be a DJ. And my great mentor for being able to make that change from radio into being a hypnotist and a coach and a life coach was Paul McKenna, who I'd never met at that time, but he was a very famous radio guy who had made that transition and was doing stage hypnosis shows on TV. He was very famous in the UK. And one of the things that I actually got to work with Paul McKenna, as you can see there, one of the things that hit me so much about my entire journey is I was able to model success stories. Because I was able to, my superpowers, my ability to read people and profile people, I was able to get almost the life essence and the juice from all the people I wanted to model. And if they were talking to me, what would they say? I remember one particular scene where I'd stopped DJing, I'd become a hypnotherapist, I didn't have a lot of money coming in, and I only had enough money because I was just doing therapy. I wasn't DJing deliberately because I wanted to leave it. I didn't want people to say, let's go and see Dave to help us stop smoking because he got us drunk last night at a gig. I had to stop DJing completely. So when you had a finite amount of cash, I had to think, well, do I spend that cash on reading a new book about personal development, or do I put it towards my rent, or do I put it towards food? And I had to ask myself, what would Paul McKenna say in that situation? And I could hear his voice saying to me, you've got to eat, but don't worry about the rent and all the rest of it will come. And it did. At every stage it came. So I stopped worrying about money from that. And from that, I kind of started moving my own direction. Having spent time with Paul McKenna, there was a life-changing experience. And I met him, I did a gig with him, and I said to him, could you do an endorsement for me? Would you give me a testimonial to say I've worked with Dave Crane and is great? And what he said to me was life-changing. He said, no. I went, well, why? He says, because I've never worked with you apart from now. I don't really know you. So what I want you to do is if you want to work with me, come on one of my courses. And then I can spend quality time, I can learn. And here's what the thing was, and I'm sure you've been through this as well, Ernesto. I know your material. I've been on courses in Dubai. I don't need to go to London to work with you because I'm already at the same kind of level of learning. So no, I'm good. And from that point on, I stopped looking for people who could elevate me because they weren't going to take me under their wing. So from that way, modeling really works. So if we go to a final slide to show the direction I took, I mean, now I've probably created that own direction for myself of going onto big stages, helping people, modeling what I do, and sharing as a mentor on stage and changing people's lives and life design and all that in the way that the guys that I grew up, and you mentioned the likes of Jim Rohn and Earl Nightingale, that's what I imagined that they were doing, and that's what I end up doing for a living. So I still hear their voices. When I want to ask them a question about what I should do next, I would think about that. But when people say to me, and it's really challenging, who is your hero? It's really hard to find. My heroes are real people. Like anybody who's working really hard to keep their family afloat during a pandemic, that's a hero to me. The big guys, I get them in my head, and I create a modeling technique to get by with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's another way of mentoring, and I think that's the important thing for people to open up their mind that mentoring can come in many ways and in many flavors and in many different servings. And that you were having, I mean, you could be mentored by George Washington or by Abraham Lincoln, because you can imagine what they would be telling you if you actually get to know them. So that's another very interesting to take on it. Now, coming back to, you already gave us a little bit of a run through of how the different ways of mentoring has affected your career in the positive way. Now, let me share with you one of the things that I also learned from Tony Robbins when I was with him, and he was basically talking about modeling, which is neuro-linguistic programming. Of course, it's based on that. And he said something, you know, if you would like to really be a class act, would you like to be the best in what you're doing, you have to, first of all, model what other people have done. So if you're a musician, you have to play the Mozarts, or you have to play the Beethovens, or you have to play the real big classic musicians. If you're a painter, you have to paint the Rembrandts, or you have to paint the Picassos, or you have to paint the Monets, so that you learn all of these things. So I was just thinking, okay, so if I need to do that and I want to be a speaker, who's going to be that person that I'm going to model? And if you think about it, and I think about it retrospectively, who's the person that I have modeled that is really, it is exactly, I mean, I am a spin of him. I mean, I have had the influence of so many different speakers and so many different experts. Who's the one that would really, really is like me? I mean, I have a younger version of him because of what I have modeled. This is exactly what I have taken from him. Who would you, I mean, you have seen me speaking and training many times. Who do you think would be that person, Dave?
I would say, because of your beard, George Michael. But you're not going to say George Michael, are you?
No, I was going to say, well, I think you're going to find this interesting. You're going to see how much his style affected my own style. Have a look.
Biases and purposes. I usually have too many slides, and so I never get around to the conclusion, so I've come to the conclusion that I need to put the conclusion first. Anytime a speaker, particularly an ancient and elderly one like myself, comes to talk to any group of human beings, the reality is we are not unbiased researchers and observers. We are carrying tons of biases. And this is mine, as spoken by somebody else. The first reviewer of my new book last October, Fast Company magazine, said, in Tom's world, it's always better to try a swan dive and deliver a colossal belly flop than to step timidly off the board while holding your nose. Fundamentally, I have spent 3.5 decades of my life devoted to one and only one idea, and that idea is business is not drab, dry, dreary, by the numbers. It is energetic, it's about passion, it's about creativity, it's about service, it's about growth, and so on and so forth, and the numbers are fine. I love profit. I don't even love profit, I love obscene profit. Because if profit is obscene, guess what you can do? Hire the world's most fantastic people and take the most extraordinary and interesting risks known to humankind. Now, you've seen this on T-shirts, you've seen it on posters, you've seen it on cards in stores, and I don't care if you've seen it 18,000 times. This is 18,001, because it deserves to be repeated. Michelangelo, the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and that we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it. It is a failure of imagination that trips most of us up, not a failure to reach some finish line.
That's you. I've seen you so many times doing that. Oh my goodness. Even the arm gestures and the moving up and down, that's so you. I didn't realize it until now. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? I mean, this is exactly what happens. This is another kind of mentorship. I mean, I took so serious this story about doing what these other successful people that we had an admiration for and painted all over so many times so that you will learn how to do it. I not only I read all his books, but I saw his trainings. I saw him speaking 3 or 4 times. I have 2 or 3 pictures with him. And it is really, I mean, if I see it, it's really exactly me just doing that in a different way. And it's just interesting.
I think you've actually got that tie. I'm not sure, but I'm sure you're wearing that tie. I mean, there's a borderline between modeling, mentoring, following, and implementing, and being a stalker.
Yeah,
you've got a borderline stalker story, and I think that you need to have one if you really want to be getting the results that these guys are talking about. You have to be a little obsessive. You have to be a little wacky and weird and think about them all the time, because if your self-talk isn't strong enough, then you need to substitute it with the words and the meaning and the wisdom of these guys. Otherwise, you're going to end up being exactly as you were before, and your self-talk will be the same as all the people around you, getting lousy results and complaining about everything.
And it was just crazy how much his personality rubbed on me. I considered that was exactly the person that I wanted to model. And that was an important thing. So now what's the difference between mentoring and modeling, Dave? Because, I mean, I have done mentoring in my way. You have done a lot more modeling. What do you think is the answer for that?
Well, I think if you can, you should get a mentor, 100%, because then you've got a real person who's done it, got it, worn the t-shirt, and will not allow you to bring your own biases and your own challenges and your own things to work out the decisions. Because even supposing I'm being mentored by a modeled Madonna, for instance, who, in my opinion, is the most successful musician of all time. Now, many people will argue with that. Why Madonna? Why would you choose that? Well, you think about her business model. She really changed the game. She was, for 4 decades, she was the #1 pop star. And what she'd do is, she's a very talented singer, a musician, but then she'd work with producers who are bringing in a new type of music. And as they're launching into the market, they do her new album and become incredibly successful on the back of that album. And once that album's been done, she'll find a new person and keep doing that. And so with Madonna, I mean, she's just an incredible artist. Now, the challenge is, these are human beings as well. So sometimes, especially when you follow your heroes on the press, you can get the bad self-talk coming from it as well. And it's your own brain interpreting what you think they would say to you as a coach with all the rubbish you've got bouncing around in your head. If you're working with a proper mentor, they will just say, no, don't do it like that. Do it like this. And if you say, but what, no, shut up, do it like this. And here's the thing. Some people are uncoachable. Some people you can't mentor because they don't pay attention to you. And I spend a lot of time mentoring and coaching people, but I also spend a lot of time sacking people and saying, if you're not listening to me, then and you do your own thing, then why should we still be working together? Because everything we do from that point on is going to be hijacked by you going in the wrong direction. So I think that if you can get a mentor, and I don't think there's ever been a time more important than now, because everybody is just in the dark as to what's happening next. If you can get a mentor to help lead you forward, or else lead you a little bit further forward till you find the next place where you need to be, then you definitely should right now, because we've never been in the dark ages, or in, as you've been saying all episode, winter, as we are right now.
I moved from Dubai and from the Netherlands and from traveling all over the world. I got married, and then I moved to the United States. And here in the United States, one of the things that I started also learning from was how religion works in these countries. Incredibly interesting, because that's the element that I never really saw. And then I started reverse engineering where most of the biggest speakers were actually working. So here in Houston lives Joel Osteen, and you're going to see his crowd and his following. There's a reason why I'm telling you this before I tell you why and who's the kind of mentor that you need to be looking for right now. So let's just have a look at Lakewood Church and Joel Austin.
Well, God bless you. Always a joy to come into your homes. And if you're ever in our area, please stop by and be a part of one of our services. I promise you, we'll make you feel right at home. Thanks so much for tuning in. And thank you again for coming out. I like to start with something funny. And I heard about this man that was walking on the beach. God said, son, you've been so faithful, I'm going to grant you one special wish. He was so excited. He said, God, I've always wanted to go to Hawaii, but I'm afraid to fly. So my wish is that you would build me a bridge across the ocean. God said, son, that's totally impossible. Think of the logistics of that. Now take some time and wish again. He said, okay, God, I've been married 4 times. All my ex-wives say I am so insensitive. So my wish is that I would be able to understand a woman. I want to know why they think like they think, why they feel like they feel. There was a long pause. God said, do you want 2 lanes or 4 lanes on that bridge?
Very funny, very informative. And see the crowd at that gig. Oh, my goodness.
That's a church. Now, here's the deal. Notice how he did it. I mean, this is what blows my mind. Thank you for coming. Thank you for, if you're going to be in the area, please come to the event. What is the equivalent now in YouTube? Please subscribe, please watch us, please do this, please do that. Exactly doing the same thing. And it just, I go like, no, sorry. This is just really driving me absolutely crazy. So I start connecting all those dots, and then I start thinking, well, you know, I mean, right now, with everything which is happening, what we also need to take into consideration is that we have to get some reverse mentoring. And that basically means being mentored by younger kids, because of course they are the ones which are showing the way, which they also, because of course the United States being so religious minded, they have that orientation. If you think about it, also in the Tony Robbins world, if you have ever been to a Tony Robbins event, you will see that they include the trance enhancing music that they have in the same that they do here in church. And then I start thinking, well, my goodness, I mean, just by having those incredible understandings, I can work it in entertainment, I can work it in speaking, I can work it in training, I can work on a one-on-one coaching. And this is what I think it's just absolutely fascinating about being able to connect the dots and being able to understand the world by the eyes of someone else, which in this case will be mentors.
No, I agree with you completely. And one of the things is, as a hypnotist, I watch the underlying things that go into programming what people will do. And hypnosis has been used in sales, in politics, in religion, in advertising, in discos, in going to restaurants. You know, the elements are built there to make you think differently. And when you're slightly off guard, then you're very suggestible, so people can put stuff into your head. And it's not necessarily related to, I mean, politics is used all the time. And you and I have studied NLP and hypnosis, and you can see it being done all the time. When we went to that church that time, I was in Houston, and it was an incredible experience. I mean, it's like I mean, I'm not a religious person. It's an incredible experience. And then you walk out, and then before you get to your car, you've got to go for all these little shops where there's free gifts for the kids to play in the car. That's no choice. And then you've got to buy all these different things as you go through. There's no way that you would have any kind of experience where you didn't walk out the other side without purchasing something. And it was just an incredibly well-oiled and significant experience. And you can see how it's so seductive that people just buy into it as a major part of their world. I get it. I didn't know it until I've been there, but I got it afterwards.
That's more or less how I've been working with mentors. Now, the next question, I think it's going to really get you hooked. How can you get anyone, and I mean anyone, literally anyone, to mentor you? Is there a way that you can get Bill Gates, or that you can get Tony Robbins, so that you can get Mike Zuckerberg, or that you can get Barack Obama, or whoever it is to mentor you? Is there a way that you can actually get to become their mentor and then a mentee or mentor? It's actually possible. You just need to watch because you're going to really like it. So if you are finding what we are sharing with you interesting, make sure to smash the subscribe button, make sure to ring the notification bell, and make sure to let us know what you are thinking. So Dave, what do you think? Is it possible to get absolutely anyone to be your mentor? And I'm talking anyone. Is it possible?
Yeah, it is. It's very possible on two levels. First of all, is you can create the modeling thing we talked about, but also right now, people who are around the world in lockdown are probably a lot more accessible than they've ever been before. So you can probably get access to more big stars, film stars, musicians, sports stars, because they're sat at home. They're not busy doing anything.
Yeah.
So if you want to connect with them, it's a good time to do it.
Okay, so here's another question connect to that. Okay, fine. They will be willing to work. Now, let's say that we have here somebody which is watching right now, and they approach you, Dave, and they say, well, you know, Dave, I would like you to mentor me. And they are just bugging you, and they are just bothering you all the time and on top of you every single day. Would you say, yes, I'm really happy to mentor you?
No,
Exactly.
I wouldn't.
I'm going to show you one last video, and then we're just going to comment on it, and then we're going to go and leave you hungry for our show on Wednesday, which is going to tell you how you can get anybody to actually mentor you. And they're going to mention a few clues there, and I tell you that will work with me, that will work with Dave, that will work with Barack Obama, that will work with absolutely anything. But you need to do one thing. Have a look.
I've always wanted a mentor, but mentorship never came in the way I imagined. Instead of having one person in my life guide me through a lot of business decisions, I worked with a variety of people at different times, each of them who taught me something very different and valuable along the way. Now, we didn't have coffee dates or structured conversations, but instead, I simply watched their lives and learned along the way. So how did I get access to amazing people? I didn't ask. I understood that people weren't just gonna let me follow them around and learn from them. People are busy, and proper mentorship takes a lot of time. Even the most generous, sweetest person will think twice about mentoring someone, especially if they don't know them well. That's why I never asked. The first thing I did was assess how I could help them, solve a problem, or offer something of value to somebody I admired. Basically, I needed to find a way to prove that they would benefit from having me around. So let's dive into a few examples to see how this unfolded. Example 1. Early in my photo career, I learned an esteemed photographer needed help writing an article for a photography magazine, and I offered to write it for him, and so he set up a 2-hour conversation from which I crafted his narrative. Now, I won because I got a deeper understanding of his mind and his work ethic, and he won because the article was written for him. Example number 2. On social media, I discovered a photographer was overwhelmed as he moved from one studio to another. And I emailed him and I told him that I was very organized and I like to take a lot of tasks on, and I would love to offer my help for free. I insisted I simply wanted to help because the experience would give me insight on working from a studio instead of working at home, which is how I worked at the time. So I volunteered for 5 hours. I packed boxes and we shared a pizza before I left. We spoke throughout the afternoon and I walked away learning so much. Mostly that I didn't want to manage a team of photographers, I didn't want massive overhead, and disorganization is the cause of a lot of stress. Example number 3. Recently, I reached out to an entrepreneur I admire. I think he's awesome and inspiring. However, after I read his about section on his website, I didn't think it showed his personality in the most powerful way. Now, based on reading a ton of his blog posts and understanding his voice on social media and combining it with his about section, I wrote an updated about section for him. Now, that seems a little bit forthcoming, right? I mean, this guy didn't even know me, and I wondered if he would be offended by my attempt. The good news is that he emailed me back the next day and said that he updated his website with what I wrote. We exchanged emails, and though we're not friends by any means, I feel comfortable reaching out in the future if I have a question. Would I like a full-time mentor? Yes. Do I wish I had somebody guide me as I navigate the business world? Yes, but running a business ain't charity. It's a transaction of time between two people, so it has to benefit both parties. If you want a mentor, find ways to create value for another person and make it a win-win. Just remember, you have something special to offer. So trust your gut, be humble, go above and beyond to ensure that you are the type of person that a mentor actually wants to work with.
If you find something that you can provide for them that is going to be very interesting, you will be able to accomplish anything. Let me just share with you the exact example of how I managed to meet almost every personality in the speaking industry and in the marketing industry. In the 2006, 2007 era, Dubai was booming, and I mean, I had spent time in Dubai since I was in 1993. I think more or less the same as you, Dave. And I knew that everybody wanted a piece of Dubai in the speaking industry. So what happened? I approached to everybody and I said, I can take you to Dubai. That's all I had to do. I presented for them the possibility of doing something that they really wanted. Dave, how many speakers have I taken to Dubai so far since we know each other?
300?
Yeah, 200-300, but I mean, known ones.
I mean, the likes of Russell Brunson and I would say about 60, 70 of them.
So that's exactly the whole point. I mean, I provided something for them. I mean, I didn't go and say, hey, can you mentor me? Hey, can you be like this? Right now, we are friends. I mean, I am good friends with John Calton. I'm good friends with Mike Filsame. I'm friends with all these huge people. Not because I went them and I started bothering them out. Please mentor me, do something for me, do something for me. I mean, that's basically like, you know, they run away like the plague. But I provided something of value to them, and then they reciprocated. And that is the secret. And that serves for absolutely anything. For me, the first thing that comes to my mind every time that I want to meet somebody is I say, well, what can I provide to this person? See, for example, right now, my daughter Nina is crazy about meeting Ariana Grande. And I have told her many times, if you find something of value that she would like, she will be absolutely thrilled to meet with you. She hasn't found that thing yet, but at least she understands the concept. Does that make sense?
On that exact point, it's true for any relationship, not just get your mentor to ask the question, what's in it for me on their behalf? When you're talking to an audience, when you're going to do a sale, in a relationship, with your kids, anything, always asking what's in it for them is the smartest way, because it doesn't matter what you want, it matters what they want. So to get access to the big mentors and the big hitters, it's a brilliant way of doing it. Success leaves clues. Every single celebrity you'd like to reach will have somewhere when you Google it, the things that they really enjoy and the things that they really can't get enough of. And all you need to do is start providing that. And that's it. They will remember.
Dave, we have reached the end of the show. We are coming back on Wednesday. What are you going to be sharing on Wednesday? Because on Wednesday, you have a ton of incredible stuff to share. So just give us a teaser, and then we go say bye-bye to everyone, at least for a couple of days. Thank you for being with us on the Toilet Paper Diaries. Dave?
I'm going to be sharing with you a number of role models and a number of mentors, and not just the impact that they had, but how they got to the stages that they're at. One in particular who was mentored and became seen as almost a patron saint of mentors when it comes to entertainment, to singing, to any element of being a superstar. This guy is probably seen as a #1 mentor. Would you like to know the business model that goes into Simon Cowell? Like him or hate him, I'm going to share that with you, and it will blow your mind. Plus other stuff. You can't go anywhere else. You've got to join us, Toilet Paper Diaries, on Wednesday, live. Subscribe, share, watch party, and comment, and we'll be there for you again. Thanks for watching the show. We hope that you enjoyed it. Make sure you watch all the videos over here. There's 2 choices for you. Or, of course, I'm Dave Crane coming from Dubai.
And this is Ernesto Verdugo coming from Houston.
And I think we should send a message. Hold on.
What is this?
Subscribe.